But working at a flea market swap meet, yeah, that was my first gig.
That's fantastic.
I got fired from it too.
You did?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
What?
So.
And let's
yeah, I was like, we got to open that up. What happened?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Download from Tier 4 Advisors HQ in Alpharetta, Georgia. We are thrilled to be joined by a good friend, longtime friend of Tier 4, André Gold. André, thanks for being here.
Hey, appreciate it.
André Gold is a vice president of cloud and infrastructure engineering at a Fortune 14 company called Cardinal Health. Maybe you've heard of them. André, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers, if you would.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks. So, once again, just want to say thanks to you and Joel for having me here.
Oh, thanks so much.
As you mentioned, André Gold, so I'm the Vice President of Cloud and Infrastructure Services for Cardinal Health. Been there just about a year now, so going on to a year. Prior to that, I spent time in a variety of different industries, but predominantly, spent about 12 years with Continental Airlines down in Houston, or formerly Continental Airlines,
right. And
then here locally in Atlanta with the division of Cox, called Cox Automotive, for about 6 years.
Fantastic. Well, I know everybody that works with you and for you loves working for André Gold. You've got a lot of fans out there, and again, appreciate the friendship. Also want to thank Joel Andersen, VP of Marketing with Tier 4, for being here. Joel, say hello to the viewers out there.
Always glad to be here. André, thank you for joining us.
Good stuff. Quick reminder of who Tier 4 Advisors is, a firm that I founded a little bit over 9 years ago here in Atlanta, Georgia, on the premise of helping IT professionals simplify and expedite the procurement process, enterprise architecture, strategy, planning, negotiations for things in the data center, telecom, managed services, cybersecurity, compliance, and emerging tech categories. We can help you with projects in different categories in parallel, by the way. We have a team of engineers that have great resumes, great experience, and we also have access to a database of over 700 vendors for your benefit. So if you or anyone you know have a project in any of those categories, want to deal with someone who's kind of the anti-vendor, if you will, instead of going out and swimming with the vendors right out of the gate.
By the way, thank you for that.
Yeah. Feel free to find us at tier4advisors.com. We are here to help. Also, quick shout out, we have been named to the Inc. 5000 list for the fourth year in a row, which is pretty cool for a company that I started out of the basement of my house on credit cards. True story. More on that later as an entrepreneur, but that was always fun. And then also, real quick, we have a Net Promoter Score for those of you tuning in that know what an NPS or Net Promoter Score is. We've been running this survey since 2015, and we have a Net Promoter Score of 97. That just speaks volumes of the Tier 4 Advisors team that we have here. And again, if you or anyone you know has any needs, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you. André, would love to hear more about your team, your organization, Cardinal Health, kind of the maybe 5 or 10 year, whatever you feel comfortable discussing. I know you're a publicly traded company, and we'll keep things high level here. But give us an idea kind of where you are, maybe why you were brought into the firm, and where you see that going in the next period of time.
Yeah, so appreciate that, Jake. So I'll be very truthful, as you know. I'm almost 12 months into it, so
sure.
There's still a lot about healthcare that I need to learn. In addition to that, we are a publicly traded company in a highly regulated market, so I'm not as able to be as liberal as I normally would with my narrative. But let me share a few things with you as well as a prospective audience. If you listen to Kaufman, or if you participated in our 10K analyst call, talked about this huge focus that we have on digital, and specifically digital transformation. We've actually just created a new digital transformation office within Cardinal to help support our efforts around digital. Now, digital is going to be broken down into 3 categories from a Cardinal point of view. The first one is going to be around the digital core, which is really focusing on efficiencies, optimization, and increasing that margin, because pharmaceutical distribution is a low margin business.
Very low, yeah, absolutely.
The second one is around the digital consumer experience. So just like retail has looked at digital experience, how to make stores stickier, how to meet consumers where they are, how to perpetuate omni-channel and really take care of leverage their supply chain and goods. We're going to be doing the same thing for our consumers that we serve. So a lot of focus on the consumer experience. Our customer experience as well. And then the third area is around digital healthcare. Jake and Joel, I'm not sure if you know, but over the first half of this year, private equity has put in more than about $15 billion in digital healthcare.
Wow. Yeah.
And in the same space as well, there's been acquisitions to the tune of 20 per month. So there's a huge amount of focus in digital healthcare.
It's crazy.
And we believe, we're well positioned to be a huge player in that space and reap the benefits of that as well. We have a division called, a line of business called Cardinal Health Cardinal at Home, as well as we launched a new product called Blue Robin out of the Ohio Valley area that allows consumers to actually aggregate their prescriptions, have 24/7 access to a pharmacist, and a variety of different things. So we're still trying to figure that out, but we think with the amount of money that's coming in, what we have to leverage, we think we're going to be one of the winners in that space too.
I'm sure you are, and it's amazing to see where healthcare has gone in the last even 10 years, let alone 30 years, right? You think about the way that doctors used to interact with their patients. It was home visits, right? And then you think about the way we would interact with doctors when we were children, in different categories in different ways. And what are our children or even our grandchildren? How are they going to interact with healthcare providers? Is going to be very interesting. And I would say that if I were a betting man, which I'm not, but if I were, I would bet that a lot of that is going to be digitally enhanced.
Absolutely.
One way or another, right? Whether that's through some sort of augmented reality or even, video doctor visits instead of going into offices. It's amazing also now what Apple Watches and other things can do, even your phone with heart rate and stuff like that. I would be willing to bet that in the next decade or two, a lot of that stuff can be done from the security of your own home with a doctor, maybe not even just down the road, but on the other side of the country.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, granted, now I'm with Cardinal Health right now, but if I were to go back and put on my Cox hat, one of the reasons why Cox made an investment in healthcare and home healthcare was because of exactly what you're talking about.
Right. All right, fantastic so far. So let's talk a little bit about the history of André Gold. This is always fun because we have a lot of your peers that come in to the Download studios. We talk about this. Keep in mind, a lot of the people that are watching the Download are going to be people like yourself, your peers at your stage of your career, where they just love hearing from
old
like-minded folks. No, I didn't say old, but seasoned, right? Seasoned.
Sure.
There's also a lot of folks, candidly, that tune in that are maybe in college or looking at people like you and I, thinking, I'd love to do that one day.
Sure.
Right? I'd love to see my career go in that direction. So we like to ask some questions that just kind of, show people that, hey, we all started somewhere.
That we did.
And that's kind of fun. So let's go ahead and start with the first question that we ask everybody on the show.
Okay.
What was your first job? Tell us about your first job you ever had.
My first job. So I think I was 14 and a half, maybe close to 15. And my first job was working at a flea market called Traders Village in Grand Prairie, Texas.
All right.
Nice.
Interesting thing. So it was a cool experience. I first started out in frying chicken, which in that area it sucked during the summer, as you might imagine in Texas.
A little warm, right?
Yeah. Then I moved up to managing the lemon chill stand, the turkey leg stand, and then the roasted corn stand. I had a Michael Jackson experience there. I was working at it, in the dead of winter, put my ear a little too close to it, my hair caught on fire.
Oh,
so if you remember the Pepsi commercial.
Holy, at the corn stand?
Yeah, at the corn stand.
Oh, wow.
So, but working at a flea market swap meet, that was my first gig.
That's fantastic.
Got fired from it too.
You did?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
What?
So.
And let's continue.
Yeah, I was like, we got to open that up. What happened
So
there?
your hair caught fire, and then you later got fired.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So I went from frying chicken to be a stalker. So absent of management, that's the highest. That's what everybody aspires to do.
Okay.
When you're a stalker, you typically work minimum 12-hour shifts, on the weekend, and they only give you a 30-minute break.
In that 12-hour shift.
Correct, in that 12-hour shift. So what the stalkers typically did was, as the park started to get slow, before we had to go and pick up all the containers, we'd go right across to the video game, the arcade, and we played video games for like 30 minutes.
There you go. Sure.
New management came in, saw the stalkers playing video games, and just fired us all on the spot.
Wow.
Ironically, the new management who fired us was fired about a month later, because when they would go and break the kids, they were stealing money out of the tills.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, that was the first job.
Well, that's good stuff. Shout out to Denio's Farmers Market and Auction in Roseville, California. That was my go-to spot on
There you
Saturdays.
go.
Buy baseball cards, skateboards,
you
cotton
go.
candy, funnel cakes, homemade lemonade.
I used to make the funnel cakes too.
Man, that was. If I was able to go to Denio's Farmers Market and Auction on a Saturday, this is before sports really took over my life, but
Sure.
that was a good week.
That's pretty good.
That was a good weekend for me. Good stuff. All right, so how did you go from the illustrious spot of making street corn at a flea market to getting into IT? What was that transition like?
Yeah, so as you might expect, it wasn't linear.
Right. Shocking, right?
But growing up, I really had kind of two passions. One was radio, television, film, specifically videography. I remember my dad was in the Marine Corps, and he came back from Okinawa one time, and he had this new kind of camcorder. And I was like, wow, this is a walking DVR. This is pretty cool. Can I try? Can I try? So that was one. And then, like my son, I was just a huge gamer, loved video games. So my first console was an Intellivision.
Okay.
I couldn't afford an Atari or Commodore 64.
Sure.
But then later on, started getting to kind of PCs. Was the first one in my high school class that found out how to hack the system where it could send messages.
Wow,
Teacher
nice.
really didn't like that because it was also the same system where you could see grades
there
and
you go.
manipulate grades.
And maybe change the grades.
Yeah, but it really took off when I got to the University of Texas. I had bought my first computer, I think it was a 286, but I was really into multiplayer games, specifically Doom.
Cool.
So on the weekends, my buddy and I would network everybody's computer. We game out for a couple hours. We hit 6th Street for a couple hours, come back and game out. And so after that, I just got into networking and computer, and it all started from gamification.
Your favorite restaurant in Austin, Texas would be?
Oh, I was a poor college kid.
Okay.
So
Ramen Noodles is my favorite restaurant.
Outside of Taco Cabana,
They got a good food scene in Austin,
do.
Texas.
They do.
Gordeau's, the place that everything comes with a donut. Do you remember that place?
I do remember that
Yeah,
place.
fantastic. In fact, interestingly enough, I think just a Facebook memory popped up 5-6 years ago. We were at the Austin City Limits.
Okay.
Once stage, I see Paul McCartney. Okay, then I got Nelly, and then I've got Metallica, and then I've got Deftones. I mean, it is crazy.
Quite the combo.
It was quite the combo in that show. That was pretty fun. It was like a 3-day, 4-day, music festival.
Cool.
Right there, good times. All right, so you got into IT, networking, computers for multiplayer Doom, things like that. I mean, just obviously technology. You're savvy.
Sure.
At that point. You're interested. You're intrigued. When did that turn into something that helped you pay the bills?
Yeah. So I was at Texas at the time, and then I was a computer science major.
Yeah.
And, when I started programming, when I got into my second year of programming, I realized that, hey, I can't sit here and do this all day. That's just not me.
Yep.
I was like, but I like it. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up taking a sabbatical from school. And during that time, I probably had about 10, 12 different jobs during a 2.5 year period. Some of it full-time, some of it contracted. But what I was using it really more so as a vehicle to figure out what is it within technology that I wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. Smart.
And so because at the time you couldn't get a degree, from institutions like you can, in this particular space. There were no cloud degrees or information security degrees. So I just went out there and said, hey, you know what? Let me take a gamble in the workforce and see what else outside of coding is it that I can do. And so that's kind of how I started bringing in a little income and figuring it out at the same time. And then I got fortunate in the 94 time frame, right around the .com era, where Cardinal was looking to build out a technology shop. And they said, hey, you've done a lot of things in technology. We want to insource the online platform. Can you come help design it, architect it, and build it for us? And so that's where, like I said, I started. I got a good opportunity, cut the grind there, and learned a lot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So a little bit of on-the-job learning.
A lot of OJT.
A lot. Okay.
Not a little.
Drinking out of the fire hose.
Yeah.
That's great. Good stuff. So we talk, again, to a lot of your peers in the industry. We talk about, how they got into it. And then we also like to talk about why they enjoy it, right? It's one of those things to have a job that pays the bills and you dread going to work. What is amazing to me is how many people truly 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into an IT career still legitimately enjoy what they do, right? Yeah. And so we always like to talk about what you enjoy most about the IT field. What would you say that is for André Gold?
Yeah, for me, I think it's the constant change. My wife always jokes with me and says that I have ADD.
Yeah,
and the truth is,
I've heard that once or twice a day from my wife.
But you think about technology; it's always changing. There's always something net new, mm-hmm. And that's one of the great things that I love about technology, because you're not going to be bored, and if you are bored, you're probably going to be left behind.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about, the Groundhog's Day almost on every episode, and It's definitely not Groundhog's Day in IT, right? Something new every day.
You might have an outage, day after day, but it's good.
Speaking of outages, we've had some lately, haven't we?
Seriously.
This world is interesting with the technology, how much we need technology, and it's like, oh, by the way, we're out for 6 hours. Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. All right, let's talk about accomplishments. I have known André for quite a while. I've been lucky enough to call him my friend as well. I would say that you are a very accomplished professional, as well as a personal family man and things like that. What is your greatest, let's just keep this in the professional side of things, what was your greatest professional accomplishment that you would say? If you want to share something else, that's fine too, if it's too personal.
Yeah, so certainly appreciate the kind words, Jake. I'll answer that by saying this is I've worked with a lot of good people, and I've worked with been on a lot of great teams. I go back and look at my career of when I was working for a custom engineering company called Symmetrics, where we had received a contract from Motorola to build a custom designed test system to test cable modems. Wow. This was at a time where there were no cable modems in homes.
Yeah.
Dial up and 128-bit ISDN was what was going on. So that was really, really cool to be part of that architecting and engineering team. Working with Continental and building out Continental.com and insourcing that during the .com era was fabulous. And all the great things that we did over at Cox Automotive. When I joined Cox Automotive, it was really AutoTrader.com, which was a $750 million organization. By the time I left, it was a $10 billion organization, and I had global infrastructure responsibilities for supporting 30 different companies, 300 different applications. But I think I'll call it the hardest thing I've ever done professionally was to write a book or co-author a book back in 2006. That was some hard work, especially because my other co-editor was in California. Wow. And the contributing authors, one was in Sydney, one was in England, and one was in Florida. So trying to get all this content together, make it meaningful and rich, meet deadlines. Yeah. I went back to undergrad during that time. Wow. So that was a lot of work.
A lot of work, for sure.
And very, very proud. Didn't sell much, but...
Tell us about your book. What's the title and what's it about?
So, Network Security Assessment from Vulnerable to Secure. And it was really talking about the pathway that, and basically the methodology and the framework organizations still use today. But it's how do you go about understanding what your risks are? How can you... with a high degree of fidelity, kind of prove them via penetration testing and other things. And what can you do then on the back end to not only be compliant, but to put together a strong security and risk management framework?
Wow, that sounds interesting. Let's keep things moving, Joel. Go ahead and get started with the next section.
Yeah, of course. So André is the VP of Cloud Infrastructure Engineering. I'm curious what your cloud adoption has looked like over the past couple of years. You mentioned some digital transformation that's kind of at the forefront of what Cardinal's doing, but curious where you guys are at in that journey from what you're able to share being a public company, but where are you guys at with your cloud adoption?
Yeah, so Cardinal, from that perspective, has made it relatively easy for me. Depending upon the numbers or the metrics that you want to use, you can say that we're 85% of our workloads are in the cloud. Wow. And have been in the clouds, for, I'd say, the last 5 years. Yeah. We initially started out with workloads in AWS. Now a significant portion of our workloads are in GCP, but fundamentally, 80% of those, 85% of those are out of our data centers and leveraging either GCP or AWS.
Interesting. And how did you choose between GCP or AWS, and why also is Azure a non-player in that conversation?
Yeah, so great question. Fundamentally, I believe that most organizations can leverage any of the three major cloud providers.
Right.
from my point of view, Andre's not Cardinal's point of view, is that I think you think less about what cloud is going to reside in normal circumstances, and more of who's going to partner more with me along this cloud journey.
Yeah.
Because it's not a sprint. It is a marathon. It is a journey. Even as we as Cardinal have a significant portion of our workloads into the cloud, to get there, to accelerate that process, we went about shifting and lifting, right?
Yeah.
So we still have a lot of, I'll call it legacy debt, baked into the application. So now what we're trying to do is a huge portion of the focus is shifting left and making these applications more modern and more cloud native. Now, the reason why we ended up switching from AWS to GCP is because it was a business decision that was made at the time.
Right.
Leadership at the time thought that Amazon might represent a competitive threat, and so as such, we decided to migrate the vast majority of our workloads in GCP. Although we've kind of recalibrated in that, and we've reached out to Amazon's reached out to us, and we've aligned with them as being a partner of ours as well. That's still where the majority of our commercial technologies reside.
That's fantastic, and I want to take a moment just to acknowledge the right answer when you are being asked as an IT leader, and I can say this with a lot of experience, by the way, of what cloud is right for us. It's not always what's the cheapest. It's not always what's the bigger name, right? Because Google, AWS, and Microsoft are all pretty big names last time I checked. It is truly the partnership,
absolutely,
right? And it's also, applications, different applications need different workload strategies, architecture, call it whatever you want to call it. The tooling, the resources, the scalability that a lot of these public hyperscalers offer matter differently to different applications than others. It's as simple as that. Yep. And so when you're looking at different things, I can't tell you how many calls a week, literally per week, that I'm on with senior IT leaders at companies all over the world, and they're talking about, we're taking this public cloud for sure. And I'm like, okay, great. And then we're peeling the onion a little bit. Sure. Why? Like, exactly. I'm not trying to sell you one thing or another, but tell me why you're going down that road. Right. And they've already made up their mind. I'm doing this. I'm doing it. Have you test driven that car yet?
Yep.
No, I've just seen a picture of it. And anyway, so it's very refreshing to hear. At times as well, by the way, you need to be able to be portable.
Sure.
Because sometimes the business makes those choices.
Absolutely.
Right? And so to have cloud native apps being developed where you're getting hooked into an AWS, what if you want to move to Azure? What if you want to move to Google? What if you want to move to even a private cloud one day? Because that's what's best for the business. Are you enabling and empowering your business to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I can tell you, we're that's certainly part of our cloud strategy. I mean, one of the things that we've made a lot of investments in and will continue to make investments is in containerization.
Smart.
I think containerization gives us that level of flexibility that if we so decide to make a different decision down the road, we have a lot more flexibility in doing so.
That's great.
So
fantastic.
That leads in perfectly to my next question, which is related to advice to organizations or IT, specifically IT leaders that are looking to make a move to the cloud or a partial move to the cloud. What are those kind of like first items that they need? Get your ducks in a row in order to make that transition. Some advice there, and Jake, feel free to chime in as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's funny hearing that question. I'm prior to Cardinal, I was at an organization where they were still mulling over whether or not to go to the cloud or not. I'm like, it's 2021, right? And then some organizations may not say it that way, but they're like, okay, so when should I go to the cloud? Well, if you're still racking and stacking, you're doing a lot of non-value added stuff, right? So let's just say that's a foregone decision, and then you get into who you're going to partner with, next. The things that I love, for IT leaders and organizations to keep in mind will probably be, two key things. One is that it is a change management exercise, both, especially within that technology, especially on the ops side, and then depending upon how far left you want to shift, meaning that do you want to give product teams and app teams full stack capabilities, meaning they can stand up on demand their own workloads?
Sure.
It's an even huger, cultural as well as change management exercise. So be prepared for that, and don't take that for granted. The second thing that I'd say is I think you hit on this a little bit earlier, Jake, is right. Cloud's not going to save you any money, right? And then you have to ask, okay, so what does things like, velocity, elasticity, how much are those worth, right? Because at the same time, I can still only develop products so fast.
Yeah.
Right. And my consumers can still only adopt it so fast.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out kind of, what makes sense there. So the other thing that I advise, IT leaders is develop some FinOps muscle or partner with somebody, right? Because these cloud costs can explode. You're going to get into situations where you want to manage those workloads, turn them up, turn them down, resize them, etc. Understanding what the billing looks like. By the way, your financial team's not going to understand that. Your traditional telecom expense management team is not going to know that. And you don't want your senior engineers and architects be mulling over, kind of constantly right-sizing the environment. So make sure you make an investment in there.
Yep. And it's also interesting, I would add, at times there is a cost savings measure depending on what it is you're looking at doing. If you're just moving workload from a colo environment where you have hardware that's 8 years old and you're paying $1,500 a cab and you got, a gig circuit going out into the internet, that's relatively low cost stuff.
Sure.
After you already, kind of write off the hardware purchase 8 years ago, right? Yep. If you will. But to your point, when you're looking at the cost of maybe refreshing that gear, I've had conversations with people that have 600 cabinets of gear that they have to refresh. That's a big number, right? To refresh. And the conversation is, at what point, instead of continuing to buy new gear every 3, 4, 5 years and managing it and buying all the software for it and then co-locating it, at what point does that make sense to look elsewhere for that particular workload, if you would just want to call it compute as a service somewhere?
Yeah, the other thing that just came to mind, as well as that I advise folks as well as Joel, is that keep in mind you still have to patch these systems in a lot of cases. You still have to manage them. They don't manage them. They don't manage themselves. So some of that administrative function that burden doesn't go away, necessarily. So that's one of the reasons, like from our cloud strategy, that we're actually looking at how to, I'll call it, create a OS as a factory, an OS on demand, where we're not continuing to go, hey, now let's upgrade from this version of Windows to this other one, put that OS as a factory into our CI/CD pipeline, and then be able to orchestrate that and automate it on demand, that the product teams like.
I really like that as well, by the way. And interestingly enough, Cardinal might have the resources and the scalability to do that in-house. There's a lot of companies out there that are losing the war on talent, finding and retaining the talent to do that type of work. Interestingly enough, there are also, as you'd probably guess, there are hundreds of vendors out there that do a lot of that work for you. Can you speak to that a little bit, your sense of, build or buy? At what point do you decide to build something? Or at what point do you decide to buy something? Does it have to do with whether or not you can find and retain the talent, or budget, or capabilities, or is that kind of a little bit of a moving target? Maybe
it's a little bit of a moving target.
I thought so too.
I think you just have to figure out is what do you want to be? Maybe this is the wrong word, but what do you want to really be competent in?
Yeah.
All right. In some particular cases, there are great partners like a Tier 4 and others out there that can take some of this off of us. And then other particular cases, that capability is too core to your secret sauce, that you might want to be responsible for managing that. Now, from a talent perspective, I'll tell you is that we're building out a captive facility in Bangalore. We have a facility in Manila, and then we've actually started going to, I'll call it this flexible workplace model, where we can look at talent across the continental U.S., irrespective of where the headquarters might be.
That's fantastic. We own a portion of another company called Tier 4 Group. Shout out to Betsy Robinson and her team over there. It used to be called Robinson Key. We rebranded to the Tier 4 Group.
Cool.
And they're helping people find and retain talent through full-time, part-time, and contract placement is really their niche. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, because you have companies that a year ago, well, let's say 2 years ago now, hard to believe, but 2 years ago would say hell no to hiring someone that's not coming into an office, let alone hiring someone that is on the other side of the world.
Sure.
Right? But you see some, expats. I mean, we have some employees ourselves living in Mexico and with no plans to return full-time to Atlanta or anywhere else in the United States for that matter, or elsewhere. We had an employee last year, half of the year was in I think South Africa, and the other half of the year was in another European country.
Like Albania or something.
Something like that,
Right? Wow.
working remotely. And as long as she has internet and the ability to join a Zoom call at 4 a.m. her time or whatever it is, we don't care as an employer, right? Do you see that as well?
Yeah, what's the makeup of your team right now? What are they doing?
Yeah, so we have this huge focus on what we call modern workplace. And before I get into that, let me back up just a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm 100% remote. The office is in Dublin, Ohio. Through the interview process, although I did interview the pandemic, never met one person.
Wow.
I didn't even meet my boss in person until this past summer.
Wow.
Right? None of my team members, etc. We all talk about kind of, wish we can get back to normal and going to things like, great SEC football games, concerts, etc. Yeah, we want that, but nobody wants to spend, 30, 45 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours in traffic anymore, right?
No,
taking
we
up
do
that.
not.
So because of that, what we decided is that, there certain things will go back to normal, certain things will have a new normal, and that's the engagement within the workplace. And so as part of this coming out of during the pandemic, we launched what we called the a flex forward schedule, where employees can either, once the office is open, be 100% in, generally speaking, 100% remote, or they can flex, come to the office 2 days or come to the office 3 days. But it's really a choice between that employer, and that manager. And like I said, I'm 100% remote. I have people that are in Chicago. I have people that are in Ohio, spread out domestically, a team in Manila. Between Zoom and Teams, I get to meet them all.
Zoom, Teams, Slack,
Yep.
Glip, Google Hangouts, right?
Right.
They're all out there for a reason.
I mean, it's certainly. I think the key thing for me during this time as a leader, it's just required me to kind of evolve my management style.
Yeah.
Because I was used to, I was used to walking into the office, and the first thing that I did, after docking the computer or whatever, was go and chat with my team.
Yeah.
See how everybody's doing, check in, get to know them.
Right.
How Johnny do this weekend in baseball stuff. I mean, just make it real personal. Did the same thing in the afternoon. Can't really do that over Zoom.
That's right.
It's really hard, especially when you join in a Fortune 14 company that's geographically dispersed. You get this little instant message with a smiley face. You're like, what the heck is that? What's André want?
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely changed, for sure.
Indeed. So over the past 18 months, maybe 2 years now, what are some new technology trends that you're paying attention to that are kind of on your radar that maybe weren't 18 months ago?
Well, so the trends. So the way I respond to that, the trends that we're really focusing and doubling down on, not that they weren't on our radar, but that we're doubling down on it. Be things like robotics. So when you think about working more efficient, not harder. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have robots as an example within our Walrus facility that's not mopping the floors.
Wow.
Right. You don't need to pay people to mop the
Pretty
floor.
good.
Right? Let the robot mop it, go recharge, and come back tomorrow and mop it again.
Yeah.
2-3 weeks ago, I was up in a distribution center up here in Duluth, and we have robots now be part of the pick, pack, and ship process, really helping out with the picking. What used to occur is an employee would come, get a big cart, put some totes on it, and then walk around the warehouse tugging this thing along, packing it, right? Part of me says, if I were one of the employees, I might still want to do it the old way, especially those days I miss my workout.
Right.
But when you think about the long term, it really makes it more, the picking process more efficient. So robotics is real key, and it's going to be a way in which we believe that will drive some of that digital core that I mentioned earlier. That's the other thing that's really going to help with digital core and digital experience is all around AM and ML. Right, we really are going to start leveraging technology to help drive the direction versus people and personal insights. Yeah. It's beyond that particular time. So we've made a huge focus on doubling down on analytics. A colleague of mine, I think his team he has like 20, 25 recs out there for data scientists and people that work out in the analytics space. So there's going to be a huge focus for us for not only efficiencies, but also innovation and new growth opportunities. We're going to follow the data.
I think that's so smart, especially in healthcare, right? I mean, you look at logistics, you look at travel, you look at payment processing, you look at higher ed. There's a lot of different ways and plays for AI, ML, all the new tech. But in healthcare especially, such a target-rich environment.
Absolutely.
Right? And quite literally, you are saving lives with some of these technologies that are going to be continually, getting better, I guess, for lack of a better term, over the next decade or two.
Absolutely.
It's going to be really, really interesting to see.
Yeah. In terms of finding and retaining talent, and you mentioned there's a couple different options in terms of work flexibility, but how are you guys navigating and kind of fighting this war on talent that's happening right now?
Yeah, because the war on talent is real.
Yeah, it's very real.
Yep.
Now, luckily, we talked about data. So luckily, if we look at the data, what we'll say is our current retention is basically on par with what we're seeing pre-pandemic. So where a lot of organizations, you start seeing a greater exodus of folks. We're not seeing that. It's probably on par with pre-pandemic. But we're doing a couple of different things. One is just cultural, right? What I mean by that is that traditionally what would happen is folks would be dependent upon HR, their HR business partner to go out there and recruit talent. Now what we've said is that, as leaders, as employees of the Cardinal family, we are all recruiters. It's no longer
Absolutely.
just HR's job, and we're really kind of changing that mind shift.
That's
right?
a great point. Yep.
It goes back to say, hey, don't you want to work with people you like?
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
So we're all recruiters. The second thing that we're doing is we've created something called Digital U. So I talked about my OJT earlier, right?
Yeah.
But we're creating a digital university for our employees where they can go get skilled and certified on things like, analytics, right? Cloud, machine learning, etc. We're providing them with very, enriched collegiate type of, courses that help, advance their respective career and their talent base. And then I think the other thing is, I go back to the OJT aspect, is that, we're saying we're all innovators.
Yeah.
We want you to push the envelope. And in doing so, it will continue to perpetuate Cardinal as a great place to work.
Right.
So, it's difficult. And then, of course, the last thing, everybody likes, intrinsic satisfaction as well. And so we've reevaluated, just being transparent, we've reduced the number of comp bands that we've had, and we've expanded that. And then, by the way, we just went through a calibration session on that as well, because we believe in appropriately and fairly compensating our employees.
Yeah, you have to, right?
Yeah, it's no choice.
It's amazing what's also taking place, not only in IT, but also healthcare across the country, where you have travel nurses that have, so many different choices. You have travel doctors that have so many choices. Mm-hmm. You have, facilities doing their very best to, cater to their patients the best they can. We see it day in and day out within IT organizations. Finding and retaining talent is something that is obviously a challenge for everybody, whether they are a Fortune 14 company or a company, candidly, with 14 employees.
Sure.
It's something that all hiring managers, recruiters, et cetera, are trying to figure out. I think it's a new world that we are all living in. And again, I think as an employer, myself, 5 companies personally, as I look at my employees and I try to cater to their needs individually, it's not grouping them all together.
Right.
And this is our methodology. This is our rules. Here's how we do things. Mm-hmm. It's got to be individual, right?
I totally agree.
Because some people are single parents, other people are dealing with other things. You have to cater. Not only make sure that they're being paid correctly, but also they're respected and they're able to, be adults and also work from wherever they decide to work from.
Yeah, you certainly can't normalize that, to your point.
100%.
Indeed. So Cardinal just celebrated its 50th birthday, correct?
50 years,
right?
yeah.
50 years.
All right.
I watched a little note from Mike Kaufman, a video where he talks about, kind of here's some things that are on our radar. And specifically, he mentioned we're continuing to grow through innovation and technology. So obviously that puts a lot of, heat on your shoulders, you and your team's shoulders, right?
No pressure.
And you mentioned a couple of those things. You mentioned digital core, digital consumer customer experience, digital healthcare. Is there anything else that's on the radar for the next 5, 10, 50 years in the future that Mike is putting out and also the other part of the leadership team?
Yeah, I think I have to leave it there. We should have our Q1 earnings call coming up where Mike should be able to share a little bit more insight with the team there. But right now, the team is really focused on what I mentioned around digital, ML and AI, and home healthcare.
Yep.
Those would probably be the key pillars.
All good stuff. All good things.
Mike seems like a great leader to work with. I mean, a lot of good strategy. You can tell that people are looking out for not only the Cardinal Health team and company and shareholders, but also people that depend on Cardinal Health for their life, right?
Yeah, no, Mike's a cool dude. I think let's see. When I first joined, I remember being on a VP call. So I talked about our corporate citizen report earlier, but I remember being on my first VP actually town hall, and Mike was talking about DE&I.
Yeah.
And somebody asked a question as it relates to, well, why are we kind of focused on this whole notion of Black Lives Matter, although they didn't say it that way, but Black, equity and the Black problem in the country and everything else. And Mike was like, I think if we fix that problem, we can fix all the other problems.
Fix anything.
Yeah, we can fix anything, and so let's get after it. And I was surprised about his candidness and his transparency there. I can also tell you that Kaufman is probably the most engaged CEO that I've worked with before.
Cool.
We meet every quarter, VP plus meetings, and these meetings are, here's the state of the union, right? It's like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, here's a problem. Hey, we break out in sessions, we brainstorm, we ideate, we come back, we draw stuff on the board, and we kind of get after it. And so you're always connected, you're always informed. But I certainly really have enjoyed my time at Cardinal, and a lot of it's because of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. Good for you, landing a spot at Cardinal. So happy and so proud of you, Andre.
I appreciate it.
That is awesome. Awesome to see.
Should we spin that wheel?
We do. So every time we have a guest, we spin the wheel. We let fate decide. We've got questions here. So go ahead and spin the wheel since you're in the studio, if you would.
No prizes?
No. Well,
it's not like Wheel of Fortune or anything.
We have some prizes for you afterwards, but not for any of our viewers, of course.
All right,
yes.
fair enough.
Yeah. Alrighty. Number 14. It's been a minute since we've had a 14, isn't it? All right. Would you rather run a country or would you rather run a business? Would you rather run a country or would you rather run a business? Joel, we're going to go ahead and start with you. Joel, would you rather run a country or would you rather run a business?
So I think it would be easier to run a business. And when I say easier, I mean like you have more control. There's a lot of other, I think, stakeholders and constituents and whatnot that you have involved running a country. However, I would consider it an incredible honor to, and let me just say, maybe Andersen, 2050 in the future might be running for a local city council or maybe a local mayor or government, president one day. But if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely prefer choosing to run a business versus a country, just for the sake of ease and less red tape and all that kind of stuff that you get caught up in.
That's a very, very fair point. Andre, we're going to defer to you. Would you rather run a country or a business?
I think it depends upon what country.
Fair.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you give me something like in the Caribbean or something like that, I might take that. But generally speaking, I'd have to say, a business, for the same reasons that Joel says. I mean, if I look at just our political climate now, and I'm like, my goodness, can we not lead with pragmatism and common sense and just take care of the people and move stuff along? I'm not. You can have that headache. Granted, there's a level of politics, in running a business.
Very true.
Like that.
100%.
Very true.
But it's easier to get people moving, swimming in the right direction.
Yeah, you bet. I'm going to go ahead and go against the grain here because I do run 5 businesses at the moment. I'm very blessed and humbled by that. I am honored to work with the people that I work with. I hope that I am the leader that they tell me that I am, which I've gotten a lot of compliments, as I know you have as well. And when you are put in a position of leadership, servant leadership, in my humble opinion, is the best way to go about that, making sure that those that work with you and for you are taken care of before yourself. I will share that if I were to run the country, or if I was to be given a choice between a business and a country, if there were some great things to overcome, which I believe that we would agree that America has in front of it, I would be honored, humbled as well to do so, and I would choose to run a country, just because, again, I've ran businesses and I've experienced that.
So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question then.
Let's hear it.
I get to ask my first question.
Let's do.
So I was watching one of the previous downloads, right? And I think somebody spun the wheel, and one of the questions came up that's like, would you rather be rich or famous? Right? And you're like, I'll take they're rich, but I'm gonna be, very private, etc.
Yes.
Versus famous.
Yep.
If you're running a country, you're famous.
You don't have a
Everybody
choice.
know. Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Great job and very good homework. So I would definitely not be doing it for the fame. I actually hate the idea of being popular. I was talking to my wife the other day. We walk around certain parts of where we live, and we're very blessed to have a lot of friends. And walking into certain places at times, you see 5 or 10 people you know, and
Sure.
you think, oh, that's great. There's other times where you see 5 or 10 people you know, and you think to yourself, if I lived cross country, I would see no one that even knew who I was, right? Especially behind most of the masks and things like that. And I'll say this for what it's worth. I would never, ever do it for fame or even money, right? In that regard, that would be the part of the job I would despise the most. It would be purely just from the standpoint of trying to fix stuff. And candidly, I think that we've had, we can go ahead and put this on. I have no problem putting this out there publicly, but I think we have a very divisive world of politics right now.
Agreed.
And have for probably the last 20 years. And you can encompass all parties and all different leaders into that as far as I'm concerned. There needs to be someone out there, and I don't know if it's someone who's mixed race, honestly. I don't know if it's a female. I don't know if it's someone who has different religions or might be openly gay or whatever. Someone needs to unify America.
Well said.
And I think that unifying America is not just for one political party or another. It's not for one race or another. I think it's honest to God for the greater good of the world. And if you do that with that in mind, there's a saying that I use a lot when I am offered the opportunity to lead in business or coaching a sports team. It is amazing to see what you can accomplish when no one cares who gets the credit. And honest to God, that's probably what one of my slogans would be if I were to run for office of anything. I don't care what it would be, but I'm not doing this for credit. And candidly, I don't even care about re-election. I'm doing this to try and fix the problems that we have at hand. And there's a lot of them out there.
Absolutely. Well said.
Indeed. Well, no matter what, whether you're running a business or whether you're running a country, that saying of, what is it? Heavy hangs the head that wears the crown. If you're in that kind of leadership position, no matter what, there's always that burden of responsibility. But, folks like yourselves that have the ability to be put in positions like that, are put in that position to be able to succeed and be able to share your leadership and your compassion and your ability to help solve problems. So anyway, Jake, appreciate your insight. André, appreciate your insight.
Thanks,
that was an interesting question. We got deep there for a minute.
I was going to say I got pretty excited for a second there. So hopefully you guys like the transparency that you get with the Download podcast. I cannot thank André Gold enough for taking your time to come in person for this. Joel, as always, thank you so much. Again, if you or anyone you know has any transformational projects, IT, data center, cloud, managed services, security, compliance, telecom, please find us at tier4advisors.com. Again, not here to sell you anything, but more so to help you in the way we possibly can. André, thanks again for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Joel, thank you. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Welcome.